Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope your day is going wonderful, and I am super excited to share a project with you for PAPERTREY Ink. Today we're going to create a pumpkin card, and we're using a brand new die set over at the PAPERTREY Ink shop. This is called Into the Blooms Pumpkins, and it creates two beautiful layered pumpkins. And I love the outcome because you don't have to do much, just break out your colored cardstock. Today we're going to add a little bit of ink to our project, but other than that, these create beautiful pumpkins. And I mentioned there's two different sizes, and we will start off by doing a little bit of die cutting, and let's create those pumpkins. I thought we would think outside the box today and create some teal colored pumpkins. I have all the dies on the cardstock that I want to die cut out, and we are going to take our base layers of our pumpkins, the big and small, and also the first layer of our smallest pumpkin with Hawaiian Shores. We'll die cut that out. The rest we'll use Aqua Mist for all the extra layers for our big and small pumpkin. For the leaves, we have two different shades of green. I have Ripe Avocado and Spring Moss. I'm going to die cut out these two leaves with our Ripe Avocado, and then two small and one larger leaf with our Spring Moss cardstock. I brought in classic craft cardstock for the detail pieces on our pumpkin trunk. We're going to die cut those out with dark chocolate. So I have a lot of die cutting to do, and when I'm done die cutting, we're going to build some pumpkins. Now that we have all of our pumpkins die cut out, we are going to do a little shading on all of our cardstock. There is a debossed detail. I don't know if the camera can pick this up or not, but it's super pretty on each of the layers. So not only do you have layers, but you have debossed detail, and then also on our leaves too. You can see this. Okay, let's start by doing some ink blending. We are going to use 3 different shades of ink. I have Olive Twist, Hawaiian Shores, and Honey Nut. The Honey Nut and Olive Twist we're going to color in with our leaves, but the Hawaiian Shores we're going to add just a little bit of ink to the edges. This is just going to intensify the layers. You can see that little bit of shading, and just add a little extra color. And I'm going to do that to all of my teal pumpkins. Okay, I added ink to all the edges. It's just going to make them stand out once they're all layered together. Okay, after we have this done, we're going to continue by adding a little bit of ink to our leaves here. I'm going to start with my Olive Twist and go over the darker leaves. How pretty that looks. It just adds so much to it when you go over the edges of your die cuts with inks. So there's our darker ink, and then I'm going to take Honey Nut and we're going to go over our one side of our lighter leaves. To me that just looks like fall. Now after we have our Honey Nut, we're going to go over the edges with the ink that's left over on our Olive Twist here. I always get Olive Twist and Ripe Avocado mixed up. So we have a two-tone leaf. Okay, I think that looks beautiful. We have our little pumpkin trunks, and we're going to go ahead and add the detail layer with the craft. I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Let's add a little bit of glue behind the detail layers. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to add this. And then we have the smaller piece here. We'll line this up. And our small one, just those little two pieces add so much to the stems of our pumpkins. And I'm going to do the same thing to our larger pumpkin stem. We're going to start with our largest pumpkin. For this, it's so easy to add the layers. Now, if you wanted to pop each of these layers up with foam adhesive, you could create a really fun dimensional card. But for today, we're just going to use the tape runner. We're going to add our first layer. It's very easy to line up because the bottom matches here. After we have our first layer, we're going to add our second layer here. Well, technically this is the third layer. You have the base, the first, and the second, and you can see this little edge here, easy to line up on the bottom. You can also line it up on the top here too. And then we have our next layer, which is our final layer, and we're going to add this. This is also easy to, this one is a little bit more tricky, but if you line it up from the top, it makes it easy peasy. And then we can add a little bit of adhesive behind the stem of our pumpkin, and this layers perfectly here. And a pumpkin is done. How easy is this? It's just beautiful. Now we're going to do the same thing with our smaller pumpkin. We'll add our first layer, and that pumpkin's good to go. We're going to flip over our stem of this pumpkin, and it just fits like a puzzle piece beautifully, and that one is good to go too. So pumpkins are done. Now we're going to add our leaves. I'm going to layer two of the smaller ones together. We're going to kind of crisscross them here. And I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive, and then this is going to go behind our smaller pumpkin. And then for our larger pumpkin, we're going to crisscross these also. For my background, we're bringing in some vellum and some fine linen cardstock. I'm going to use the delicately woven die. And we're going to die cut out one of these with the fine linen. And then I'm also going to bring in some leaves. This is the branching out leaf die from PAPERTREY Ink. And I want to die cut this out with vellum. I have my leaves die cut out with my vellum. And then I also have my delicately woven piece. To me this looks like burlap. So I thought it would go really good in the background of my pumpkins. Now I wanted to create a fine linen card base. Now you could, this is a nice cardstock to where if you would create your card base with this, you could, but I'm going to stretch mine a little bit. And I just created a card front panel, so it's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. We're going to start by adhering this panel directly to our card base. I'm just going to use my tape runner for that. It's nice having card front panels because the inside stays white too. Now this is the same color as this, but I wanted to add a little bit of contrast, so I have a piece of dark chocolate cardstock. This measures 4 inches by 5 1/4. So we're going to adhere, before we adhere this, actually let's add our delicately woven piece. Now I want to put it in a, I want to create a patchy burlap look. So to do that, we're just going to add some adhesive behind our die cut piece here. Okay, we're going to stretch one piece, so what we're going to do is figure out our placement. I'm going to add this. Up here in the corner is a good spot. And then I'm going to use my scissors and we're going to trim off the excess. And I'm keeping it together because we're going to add the rest of this on the opposite end of our panel here. So now that we have this top corner, we can go ahead and do the bottom corner. I'm loving the way this looks so far. We add our last piece on that left side, and I'll trim this off. So one piece actually stretches quite far. Now that we have our woven piece adhered to our dark chocolate, we're going to flip this around. We're going to add some adhesive, and then this is going to go in the center of our card base. Next, I'm going to flip around my vellum, and I'm going to add some adhesive. Okay, I trimmed my vellum in half. I basically just took the bottom part off because I want to add multiple layers, and this is large enough to where I could do that. I went ahead and put foam adhesive behind each of my pumpkins. I'm just going to remove the release paper, and we're going to start by adding our largest pumpkin. This is going to go in the middle. So we have a little bit of those leaves popping out. Now we're going to go ahead and add our smaller leaf. I think I'm going to do a little tucking. We'll trim this down. Add a little more adhesive. Let's tuck this behind our leaves here, like so. And then we can add our smaller pumpkin in this corner. Wonderful. Just love the teal pumpkins. Now we need a sentiment. So for that, I'm going to stamp a sentiment using the Tag It Minis stamp set. And I'm going to stamp it with classic craft. So let's grab an acrylic block here. Some white cardstock. I'm going to stamp our tag. I always get my sentiments upside down. I don't know how I do that. We're going to stamp "You're the Best" right in the middle here. And then while we have our black ink out, we're going to put this away, and I'm going to bring in a brand new stamp set. It's part of the latest release from PAPERTREY Ink. This is called the Larger Than Life Fall Sentiments. And I love the sentiment says "Leaves and pumpkins, please." I think that's so cute. I'm going to, and they're spaced apart to where you can separate them. So that's what I'm going to do. Now I went ahead and die cut out my tag, and I cut my sentiment here into strips. And I do want to add a little bit of color to these, just so they stand out and kind of go with the I just didn't want a bright, stark white on my card since we don't have any white there. So to do that, I'm just going to use my finger dauber. This has a little bit of honey nut on here, and I'm going to add a little bit of shading to the very bottom, just giving it a little bit of a vintage feel. Okay, I think that just kind of goes better with our card. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So we have our sentiment. Now I also, after I got done die cutting, I created a bow, and I just used our PAPERTREY Ink's natural twine. Love this stuff for fall cards. I doubled up on it, and then I added a button to the center. The buttons here are from the Vintage Button Collection. This is the classic craft. Lots of buttons in here, and I thought it'd go perfect with our card. Now rather than threading my little tag with the natural twine, we're going to do we're just going to layer them together to give it a look like they're connected. So we're going to first add our little tag, and then I'm going to add my twine here. To do that, I used glue dots to secure my button to my bow, and then I'm going to use another one on the back side. And then we can just secure that. We're going to add that. I just love the way that looks. Now we can finish off our card by adding the rest of our sentiment, and I'm going to just scatter them on the bottom left corner here. I already put foam adhesive behind each one of these. I'm just going to lightly place them first, and then once I'm happy with the placement, I can commit to it. And I think that looks really nice. Something's sticking here. Probably my craft mat. So I love the way this looks, but I do want to add a little bit more teal just to spread out that color a little bit more. To do that, I'm going to be using some Hawaiian Shores sequins. Once I'm happy with the placement, I can just glue these down. Wonderful. Have to add a little sparkle there. And then that will finish my card today for Papertrey Ink. Nice pretty vintage fall card, could be used for anything. Thank yous just because, and I love that. Thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon.